Hey there. A question's come up that I want to kind of add a little bit of information to, and that's the question of kind of sculpting hair. Sculpting hair in and of itself is relatively straightforward right now. There's a couple of tools that you can use, the standard brush, and then making sure that you're using it with lazy mouse is definitely one approach. Just come in, stroke, lazy mouse, lower your lazy step, and increase your lazy radius. Then you just come in and you start to pick your highlights, go from there. Let's just store a morph target before we go further. And you can get some good results. Press Alt to push in, and you start to get the texture of hair. But this is really just half of the battle, because when people ask, how do you sculpt hair, they're really not just asking, hey, how do I texture hair? That's very far from being a major part of the discussion. Instead, the question really has to do with, how do I create the bulk of hair while keeping it looking lively, while keeping it looking like actual hair. That's not an easy step. And if you were to go back and research some of the old guys like Bernini and people like that, and you look at the old Grecian statues with how they do hair, it's incredibly complex. You look at it and you think, well, there's no way I could do that. At least there's no way I could do that without sitting down and spending, a good long time, a couple of weeks studying these things. And that, for me, that's how long it would take. But there's a craftsmanship behind it, and that's what you need to learn, because I've sat down and spent some time studying these things. You need to learn the craftsmanship approach to it. You also need to remember a couple of mathematical harmonies or ratios. And what I'm going to try to do is kind of keep things within groupings of 3s and 2s. So I'm going to take the demo head. This is a head I sculpted a long time ago, and it got included in with ZBrush. And, it gives you kind of a hallmark for my sculpting. Like, there's a lot of things wrong with this. The corner of the mouth, all of this is a little bit, it's just pre where I am right now. The masseter I would be sculpting differently now. All of that stuff. But all of that done and said, we can use this because you'll have this right in front of you, and you can learn how to sculpt this hair a little bit better. And by better, I mean, from my perspective, with a bit more organization. That's really all we're talking about at the end of the day. So a couple of things to note about what I've done. I've divided it a couple of times. So we're at almost 1 million polygons. So you'll want to do that if you're following along. The other thing that I've done is adjusted tablet pressure with the clay buildup brush, because that's going to be the brush that I use first. So clay buildup is here, and then take a look at what I've done with the tablet pressure under size. I've set my focal shift to 52, and what that's going to do is just give it a little bit more sensitivity and give me a little bit more variety. So that's important. But again, the most important thing is to start to think in 3s and 2s, start to think in terms of musical scale and repetition. So I don't know exactly what we're going to do hairstyle-wise here, but symmetry is off. And the first thing I'm thinking about now is big planes. I'm not thinking about that hair texture I did with the standard brush. I'm thinking big planes. Like McDreamy hair, where you're getting this kind of flowing out in these really nice locks. So he doesn't have nice locks, he's just got it all pulled back. But let's see what we can do. I like to start at the root and move back. This kind of depth is a little bit on the intense side. It's larger than normal also because I've gone to stroke and I've set my lazy step to 0.04. So I'm just going to modify that. All right. Now, again, we don't know exactly what kind of hairstyle, but I have a morph target stored, so I can always switch. If we wanted to go and do, say, pull it all the way back, we want to get clumps Smooth often. Lower the draw size. And one thing that you'll notice, at least I hope you'll notice, if I'm doing this one stroke upon another like this, the strokes start to overlap in the wrong way. Basically, the hair in the back tends to overlap the hair in the front, and that's absolutely not what we want. So I want you to not only think about 2s and 3s, but also think about hair directionality and how the hair lays. So I'm going to undo everything I just did. Switch, delete, store a new one. And I'm going to start where the hair starts, in the back. Somewhere in the back, either side. You pick. And then it's going to rotate out from there. You want to also think about your hair part, and then how the hair is going to rotate out from there as well. So start with that. Don't be afraid of a curl. And it's going to take some time to get used to some kind of pattern, some kind of interesting pattern. Okay, I'm keeping that part line in my mind, but I don't want to go too far because we also have to worry about the overlap here. So the hair is going to be starting and moving up. Our overlap is actually going to start down here. So we need to get some curls, some hair movement in all the way down here. Starting at the bottom. Sometimes you can cheat and just start to carve away. Okay, I'm going to start to lengthen some of that. I made a little too short of strokes, so I'm going to start to merge. But I'm starting to merge from the bottom, and I'm just trying to find an intelligent pattern. But what I really want you to pay attention to and experiment with is the repetition. One direction, kind of stays there, and then here. 1, 2, 3. Okay, then how does this repeat, and what does it terminate in? Try to understand how these guys are repeating, also how they're offset from each other. Try not to make them repeat, right next to each other. Try to drop the repetition downwards or upwards. Spend some time trying to find the pattern that works, and if it doesn't work out, then start over. But a little bit of extra time spent on this can really make a difference. Don't forget to cut the hair part in. So I'm going to use Damien's standard brush for that. It's a pretty good fast brush to get it. I'm also going to hit a couple of accents in there. Okay, went a little crazy, but that's what the move brush is for. Clay buildup, and remember, start in the back and start in the bottom. Well, if we get hair going out one side that direction, then we need this side to do roughly the same. Good thing about clay buildup is you just brush back and forth. And let's get it to affect the forehead. Breaking up that straight up and down I built in there accidentally. And gonna try to undo this evenness. By just kind of weighting them slightly differently. Lifting this one, dropping this one, dropping this one more. Anyways, you get the idea now. The point is that you need to be finding clumps. You need to be finding the math behind it. You really want to have a sense of how this mathematically relates, the harmony of the hair. And that needs to be part of your process because it'll be much more dynamic. Now, we've lost a lot of the math that they used to use, but that doesn't mean that we can't get this just a little bit better. So I hope that is useful and helps you. Remember to think about clumping. So clumping is where one individual piece like this comes across. Think about its 3D form. Think about it as its own distinct entity. Think about this piece and slight pattern to it. And then once you've thought about the clumping, then you move on to the texturing. So one way that I like to do texturing, switch over to trim dynamic and switch over to, say, alpha 60. And this has a really nice approach towards integrating stuff. It'll quite naturally start to feather things. You can press Alt to build up, but this will undo a lot of the staticness that the clay buildup brush gave it. Just remember to follow the strokes. And remember it's a pattern, so whatever you do to it, it's going to tend to, it's going to be a little bit more repetitive than what clay buildup was. Just because there's basically 6 of those bars in one stroke. Might be wise to do the same thing here so that you get size. I went a little quick. Tablet pressure. Make sure that you've set focal shift to like about 50. Same as we did with the buildup, clay buildup. And see what you can do. Sometimes you just want to use it lightly, pressing Alt to just blend some more complicated areas. And add some kind of tertiary detail in there. It's a good thing to do up here at the top too. Because it really helps get rid of that staccato kind of clay buildup approach. Okay, so you can see some of the potential. Everything's going to take longer to work, than what we're doing right here, but you get the general idea. Final thing to touch up would be the standard brush and pick the individual hairs, or Damien standard brush, and this time press Alt. Just hit some shadows in there. And, with a little bit of work, it'll all turn out. So I hope you find that helpful. Just keep in mind, texture's the last thing. Block first. Think about the harmony of your blocks. And good luck with your sculpting.